Hello, and welcome to Bridgeford Trust Company's Delivering Direction and Control podcast series. Our podcast series is designed to educate, challenge, and inspire listeners while keeping you updated on developments regarding modern trust law and powerful planning opportunities available, all in an effort to deliver direction and control to clients and their advisors.
This is David Warren, Chairman of the Board of Bridgeford Trust Company, and of course, co-founder, here with another episode of our podcast. I continue to be amazed at just how widely listened to this is, not only just across the country, but around the world, and the amount of talent we've been able to talk to. I think we're well over 50 episodes now, and we love the feedback we've been getting. And I just always say this is one of the favorite parts of my week, to be able to have conversations with thought leaders. And today we have another one, and by the name of Matthew Hoffman. And I'm very much looking forward to this conversation, but looking forward to kind of trapping him on this podcast now for a while. But Matt is one of those entrepreneurial guys that you kind of want to be when you grow up. And we'll talk a little bit about his background. But what I think is most bothersome to me, in addition to wanting to be him someday, is that he came up with a great idea that I wish I did, which now is called Trusted Advisor. And so we'll get into what that is and how Matt and I have been connected to that organization. But Matt has done some great work and he's a relatively young guy, but he's done some great work. I refer to him behind his back as a force of nature. He has an amazing and really uncanny ability to make connections and to build networks. Not just as a sales guy, but more primarily as a thought leader and as a big idea thinker. And so the most recent machination of his entrepreneurial thinking and platform building is interesting and actually a little bit out of scope of what he did before he came up with the idea of Trusted Advisor. So, Matt, first of all, thank you for being here with us. And second of all, thank you for our partnership, which we'll explore in more detail later on in the podcast. But really, I want to begin with your beginning, because it seems you just have an unbelievable track record for finding needs and niches and building that out. So why don't you talk to me about that? I think the something I didn't realize when I was making sure I had the right person today was Empire. Tell me about Empire Software Inc. Tell me about that, because it seemed like that's one of the first things you did, right? Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, that was kind of in the middle, but thank you, David.
Okay.
Good to see you. I think favorite part of my week too, but yeah, I'm glad to be here and chat with you. And so, yeah, I'll give you the speedy background, right? Because I'm the founder of Trusted Advisor, as you mentioned. We're now right at our 5-year anniversary. So, I've done a lot of reflecting on the last 5 years and what we've built here, but it was very much, as you said, it's been built off of my prior experiences. And, we're constantly obviously evolving too as a company. But I'll give you the super speedy background because I think it's kind of looped around in an interesting way. Way back in the day, about 15 years ago, I was a trained architect, right? Mm-hmm. So I started in architecture and design here in New York City, where I still live. And I started working back then with large single-family offices, and I didn't know what they were. I was right out of school, and obviously I was focused on their architecture work. But pretty quickly, I think like yourself, very entrepreneurial, and I was doing any kind of work for them that I could, including things sometimes outside of architecture. So I started helping them on the operations side, and then technology, and then after about 5 years, I ended up making the jump to that family office. Right, it was a single family office in LA. It was a third generation family, specifically in real estate. And, they were very, very organized internally, but it was still extremely paper driven and Excel driven. They had about 50 entities. It was pretty heavy in terms of cash flow and a lot of tangible assets, art collections, valuables, kind of things on the personal side that were mixed with, with the role of the family office. They looked around and I was speaking with them and they were like, "Oh, you're a young guy, help us on the technology side." And so that turned into Empire that you mentioned. Okay. So initially that was built to essentially give that family a window into the entities, into the cash flow, into the kind of high level balances, the investment accounts, the trust, the estate plan.
So it was
the
a
ent-
software. It was a
the
software
entity
program.
structure, yeah, and it sat on top of the accounting, and then that relatively quickly, maybe in a year or two, turned into kind of a full-fledged technology company. We realized we were talking to other folks that we were meeting in LA, getting some outside interest. So then I stepped in basically to run that company, initially funded by the family, but then we did raise outside capital. And then I ran that for about 5 years. So that was the 5 years, my professional 5 years before Trusted Advisors. So that started about 10 years ago. That platform that we had was extremely accounting focused. And so in the long run there, what happened was I ended up falling into the world in LA of entertainment business managers, which if you're not in entertainment, you might not know that term, but basically they are pretty much always 80-90% of the time they're accountants, but they really operate like a family office for high profile entertainment and music clients. So they're dealing with the business, they're dealing with the touring, they're dealing with the royalty accounting, they're dealing with the teams, and they're dealing with all of the personal aspects.
Yeah, the behind the scenes stuff of the glamour, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it was a great fit for what we had built. And then I spent about 5 years there building a lot of relationships with these private client advisors, specifically in entertainment and music. And then, obviously that's morphed into Trusted Advisor, which is a
And
separate company.
before we get there, could you talk
Sure.
a little bit about Blank Space? What's the
Yeah.
Blank Space
So
project?
that was technically my first startup, right? We didn't raise money, it wasn't hyper glamorous. That was fun, because I was a designer, right? I was an architect in the design industry. Creative competitions are go back, since the advent of architecture as a profession. We organized them. So that was Blank Space, right? So I started that, I don't even know, probably like 2011, I think, pretty fresh out of school. And they ended up getting pretty big and global. And we did interesting partnerships back then where, for instance, we partnered with the mayor's office in New York City and a bunch of the, three-letter offices in New York, specifically around helping them navigate driverless cars and what that would look like in the city. We had another one that we did that was focused on outer space where we partnered with NASA. And so anyway, that was kind of interesting training for me. And we worked with a lot of pretty high profile architects and designers to help judge those competitions and hosted some events in DC at some, major museums and whatnot. And so for me, I think that was me cutting my teeth on kind of the partnership side, which, kind of like our partnership, obviously, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I think that those were some of the, the first big partnerships that, I worked on, which was fun.
Yeah, no, and it's amazing training to bring you to where you are. So I will lead us into Trusted Advisor. As you know, I'm a huge supporter, a big believer in it. And I was joking earlier, but it's such a great idea. And Bridgeford's all about big ideas, and you built a very strong platform support in an area I think that was woefully really unorganized and unsupported, quite frankly, in terms of consistency. And what I'm talking about is the entertainment industry, sports, professional sports industry. And so while Bridgeford, over the years, because of our work in California, developed relationships with various business managers and have various, high level and high profile clients. There didn't seem to be a particular organization around getting them the right advisors. And it sounds like, and it took me a while to learn, and Matt, you taught me this, it's not as easy as you would think, because there's big trust issues and there's issues that are specific and germane. So you came up with the big idea to build out a support network. So talk to me about that. We've talked, offline before, but I'm so impressed that you figured out there was such a need, because it has exploded. So, but what brought you to how did you figure out there was even a need here? Because that's pretty intuitive.
Yeah, you're right. So a lot of it came out of, the relationships that I spent already, 5 years building when I had the tech company, primarily in LA. But it was exactly what you mentioned. These are private client advisors, right? They're dealing directly with the clients on a day-to-day basis. They're accountants, they're attorneys, they're bankers, they're concierge, fine art consulting, aviation consulting, and whatnot. I think what we've always found in this space is, that they're high-level professional advisors. Whether they're working on the accounting or the legal issues, there are always additional nuances and like pretty expansive ones when you're dealing with a touring music artist,
Hmm.
with an athlete or an entertainer. Some of it is, I mean, a lot of it is the business, just the business. Say you have a young athlete, their revenue trajectory looks much different than, kind of a typical high net worth family, right? It's almost the opposite, where they can make a lot of money up front. And then maybe not as much as they go on in life. It's the same even for touring artists, right? Where touring artists are a lot different than athletes, but their revenue can be really up and down. Obviously, nobody saw COVID coming, but even
Right.
without giant things like COVID happening, the revenue can still be up and down quite a bit.
Well, and they're also open, if I can jump in, because I thought about you. I watched the Billy Joel, this two-part series of Billy Joel, and what struck me was something I wanted to talk about today is not only are you looking at all those aspects and how the differences of really protecting these artists and athletes from themselves in many respects, we've talked about that, but from other people. I mean, Billy Joel lost everything at one point, and how many other artists who were great at their art but didn't understand business got swindled, right? I mean, it's such a. I mean, look at Taylor Swift. You look at all these examples of these wildly successful, talented people who just got conned because the industry, unfortunately, is chock full of con artists. And I can tell you, even in the LA market, I've met lots of people who I would say are a bit nefarious in the entertainment space, taking advantage of artists who have no business acumen. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, it obviously goes into the name of trusted advisor. I think
Hmm.
a lot of what I personally picked up on, I think when I had the tech company and even ongoing, is reputation means a lot, right? I think a lot of people in the business, the other thing I think that helps a lot is kind of like folks like yourself. I think it takes a small army really to work and manage and grow, say, the personal and professional side of say a film and TV actor.
Hmm.
What I've always found that's healthy is whether they're the attorney, the accountant, the trust company. Generally, the folks that are reliable are the ones that stick with what they know, and then they bring in outside advisors for everything else, right? Because it does take so family law issues, trust
Sure.
issues, international
Absolutely.
tax issues. There are literally a million things, mortgages.
Well, yeah, and you even look at influencers, right? I mean, it's almost each demographic that you're serving has a different set of issues and concerns. I mean, you did the
Sure.
first summit, I think you called it in LA for influencers, defined as, I guess, podcasters and these young kids who are doing things on the internet that are making them millions and millions of dollars. That's a whole nother underserved demographic. I mean, we're talking about a kid, right, who's suddenly worth $10 million. How do they even make sense of that, and how do they put a team together? And I think, again, that's what you're doing that is excuse me, so valuable, because while you're not the advisor, you have the network of advisors, right? So talk about that.
Exactly. I think what we found, to go back to what you had said earlier, I
Mhm.
spent 5 years at the tech company running around between all these very interesting and talented advisors, and they kind of knew each other. Like if you're an accountant that's managing huge music talent, like you have your, go-to people, perhaps your attorneys, your bankers and whatnot.
Mhm.
Um, Trusted Advisor really came from us getting those people together because it was exactly like you said before. There was a giant need. Like people kind of knew each other, but I was always scratching my head about why aren't these people, getting to like why isn't there an actual organization or association that's getting them together on a more regular basis? There are some big industry conferences that are once a year, and I saw
Mhm.
that happen.
Mhm. Mhm.
That get people out.
Yeah.
In LA and New York, usually they're kind of geographic, and really the impetus for trusted advisor was there's obvious value in doing that more regularly and across multiple chapters, kind of tackling multiple
And
chapters like we have
establishing
now.
expertise, credibility. I mean, not that you say this, but in my mind, if you allow somebody into your network, into your group, and you can talk about how partnerships are established, you don't just let everybody in. So the way I look at you and your group is there's sort of an ancillary stamp of approval, right? Like you, and I'm sure you do some little bit of due diligence, and you're not going to bring in some con artist business manager somewhere in Beverly Hills running around ripping off professional athletes, and we know they exist. So that's the other thing I like about it. So as I'm meeting people at these various events, which we'll get to, in my mind, I kind of think, well, if Matt and his team brought him in, then I believe that I'm not dealing with a nefarious person. I
Mhm.
think that's important. I think that, to me, that's one of the most important things that you do. And I know you don't really promote that, but I talk about you guys in that respect because I feel like when I'm at an event, I meet somebody, they're the real deal. There's somebody that knows what they're doing. Otherwise, you wouldn't have let them in. So talk about that.
Yeah, that's the goal, obviously. I think when I, again, had the tech company before this, I used to go to a lot of family office organizations and conferences and whatnot. Some were great, that I'm still, in touch with folks that I met at some. And I also went to a lot that were, felt like a ton of people that were out selling something and slinging business cards and, maybe didn't even have a ton of traction in whatever space they said that they were in. I think the big difference with what we're after here, and I think really everyone in the group, is, generally these are not folks and advisors that need to go out. They're not really going out to network a ton and try to get business. They already have a book of clients. It's kind of the inverse of that. I think most of the time it's exactly what you just said. It is, say I'm the accountant for, a huge touring artist. They're going to throw a million things at me every day that I need to try to help that client navigate. It could, again, trigger immigration issues or trust questions or international tax, family law. And I need to be able to bring people in that are reliable, that are going to get the job done, that it's almost more of a liability for, me, if I'm the advisor personally. I need to be sure that whoever, I'm bringing in potentially to help work on the client is going to get the job done.
Yep.
And that also knows, not, say if it's a family lawyer, right, that obviously that they're going to be a great family lawyer, but that they might understand the intricacies of, what family law is if you're dealing with a touring artist with, say, a huge royalty catalog, right? That is much different. That affects things there. So you also need someone not only that can handle whatever that specific aspect is, but what understands what the nuances are. So I think that is kind of the big thing that makes the group work, right? Is that it's not a ton of people that are out hunting, for business. It's more so looking for just reliable other, types of advisors that can, help them with clients.
Man, I love what you said there. And this is one of the aspects that draws me in Bridgeford, because I mentioned earlier in the podcast and all of our podcasts, we love thought leadership. We love education. So what you've built is much more than just a networking organization for people like me to walk around and hunt for business cards. It's really about bringing value and education and thought leadership. So I have become so impressed over the years from when I first met you and then we joined and then I go to your events, is now most of your events has a thought leadership component. There is a panel discussion, and it's a multidisciplinary panel discussion. And it's not overly planned or overly choreographed. It's a free-flowing conversation, but you're bringing value. So you take something that people may look at and say, well, I want to join this group because I want to figure out how to make Bruce Springsteen my client. That's not what you're doing. That's not why you did this. You're trying to bring, I understand the network. And I think the way you're executing and the way we've executed together, I mean, you've been gracious enough to allow Bridgeford to be on panels in New York City and LA, and in Orange County, we did a really big event together, a huge turnout. And then London will be together next week, and Zurich. And I love being a part of that because that's the way Bridgeford goes to market. I don't run around and slap backs and kiss babies and say, Bridgeford's great, come to us. We want to bring value. And I think that's exactly what you're doing. And I think that's evolved, because when I first started going to the groups, it seemed like it was a little bit more of a networking. And then now I think people show up because they want to hear what these panels have to say. So talk to me about that evolution.
Yeah. I think obviously that's why, you guys are such awesome partners, right? Is that it's really education first. You're curious. I think that you obviously bring the hardcore knowledge from the trust side. And, I remember doing calls with you where we had business managers in LA that were potentially talking about restructuring their clients' assets from a potential tax perspective, and that can be tied to catalog sales, which are often involved in estate planning and whatnot. That's where, again, I always say this at our events, to new members and whatnot. We at Trusted Advisor, our team, we're not advisors technically. We really don't touch the end clients. What we do is meet interesting folks like yourself, spend time with you. I think kind of, try to, as much as possible, educate ourselves obviously about what you do, and then build that into our programming, which is what you're talking about.
Well, I think it's effective. And I want to compliment you on it. I don't think I've said that to you before. It's very effective. And I do think that's what's driving attendance. I think people want to hear what these people have. I mean, for example, in London, we have one of the biggest private client attorneys is going to talk about his perception, and people want to know. And sometimes we get a little controversial, and you've cautioned me about that. But the reality is we're living in a time that is unprecedented every single day, including today. You look at the news, And the uncertainty that has spread like wildfire around the country and around the world impacts the entertainment industry when there's discussion about moving Hollywood production to a different state because somebody wants that to happen, right? I mean, those are things that we can't ignore around us. And I know you and I have talked about, well, let's not get into too many controversial topics, but we can't ignore a certain reality either. And that's where I think we've struck a nice balance. I think you guys have struck a great balance because as politics is impacting your target market, right? It just is. And we have to be aware of that too.
It's constant. It's the strikes. Now that I've been working with a lot of these advisors in the group for, maybe a bit more than a decade, it's changed a lot. It changes literally constantly. The industry has obviously changed a lot. I think about 10 years ago was probably the advent of influencers in a lot of ways. I think if you were an advisor 10 years ago that started working with some of the original like YouTube kids and whatnot, we have attorneys and folks in the group that have been working with clients in that space for that long. That was kind of the beginning. Touring artists were much different than, even, things kind of industry wide, like the film and TV strikes, I think are still having a lot of effects to that industry and what the contracts look like and how clients generate revenue. It's wrapped up in AI and just the rights, right? We often cover, we have really great IP attorneys in the group. A lot of it is about protecting the name, image, likeness of clients. And again, obviously they're constantly signing endorsement deals and film and TV deals and whatnot. They're constantly looking at these things. And then, exactly like you said, a lot of it now, I guess always though, is international. So we've grown internationally, right?
Yeah, talk about that if you can. I wanted you to focus on it because your trajectory there has been incredible. How quickly you've developed your footprint in London in particular. Can you talk about that?
Exactly. I think that's where, for 3 years at least, we were really just domestic focused in the States with what we did with the advisors. We went to London about 2 years ago. That took off really quickly. Now we're in Manchester, we're in Zurich, Switzerland. We're looking at some other places like Dubai, Stockholm, and Amsterdam. What we realized pretty quickly when we first branched out to London is how international the clients are. They're moving, if you're a film and TV actor in LA, you'll go to London to shoot for multiple months. And then, and the same for all the Brits, all the British talent, sports, film and TV, music end up in the States. So they need immigration, they need bank accounts, they might be buying a home, getting a mortgage. They need, private security. It could be anything. And the talent is back and forth so much, but typically the advisors are geographic, right? So if you're an attorney in California, usually you can just deal with issues there. So that was like a really big growth moment for us, I think still is all of the international work, because that brings a lot of value. Our London growth has brought a lot of value to folks in the States, and vice versa, exactly like yourself and us working with you on the giant Swiss UK trip next week. Is that they get a ton of value out of meeting folks like yourself too, that their clients are constantly going to the States and they need resources from folks and companies like yourself to help them navigate that, right?
Well, and I'm learning so much too. I mean, that's the other thing too. I think that the other advantage for the advisors, in addition to thought leadership, is if you go with an open mind and you're paying attention, you're going to learn something. I mean, one of my favorite things I didn't even know existed, and we talked about this with on our earlier podcast about one of my favorite introductions is into an industry I didn't even know existed, which is this memorabilia stuff, and how I'm talking to the guy who holds the original, I guess, manuscript, if you will, of "Living on a Prayer" from Bon Jovi, and I didn't even know this existed, where people have all these original manuscripts and original tour memorabilia. I call it memorabilia, but whatever you want to call it, and it's valuable. It isn't just a piece of paper. I mean, somebody who loves Bon Jovi will spend an enormous amount of money to buy that little piece of paper, right? And so the person I met I learned a lot about that whole industry, and I've been able to actually make a couple of introductions, because that's important to these entertainers. I mean, in addition to their the record catalog and everything else that's valuable. I mean, an original signed T-shirt that somebody has, it could be worth $1 million to the right buyer. And as I said, I didn't know that existed. And if I didn't show up to LA to that summit, I would have known that person was there. So I love going to these events and saying, just who am I going to meet? You meet somebody else who's an expert in currency movement around the world, right? I wouldn't have met that otherwise. So I mean, what all this to say is that you're put together such a multidisciplinary, impressive network of people that just add so much value, and it does actually, in my opinion, not only does it add value and become important to entertainment and all the things we're talking about, but also to wealthy people in general too. I mean, that whole network is essential, and I'm amazed how many people that are billionaires don't have the right network to be plugged into to learn about all of these things, Matt. So again, all of this is to say congratulations. Give me some numbers. Talk to me about numbers, because that you blew me away. And I remember in New York City, it was one of the first times I sort of put you on the spot and said, well, how big are you now? And you kind of knocked me out of off my seat, because I didn't realize you had grown this fast, this big. So you could give us some ballpark numbers of your size now.
Mm-hmm. I think we're right around a little over 600 members, right? So our whole membership base, it's individually based, right? So sometimes we'll have one or two people at a company that are members. Sometimes, we have some larger companies involved where they have, offices in London and New York and LA, and, we've onboarded 20 or 30 folks, right? I think our thing, right? I haven't raised any money for this, right? We basically bootstrapped it, which I like a lot. So I think it's always been healthy growth. It's primarily word of mouth, which goes back to what you said a couple questions ago around the references. I think it always, when we have folks on board, we get to know them. When they make an intro for us, it often says a lot, right? Just in terms of, if you're so that does a lot. Instead of, if we were out pushing stuff through Instagram ads or LinkedIn ads and just getting, kind of random people like that, I think our job vetting would fall apart pretty quickly. And, so that's worked out well. And the membership model in general, it got us out. Yeah, I had some background before this in traditional events and media companies, right? Actually in architecture and design, but that tended to be very sponsor heavy in terms of their revenue. And I think that's how a lot of typical conferences exist, right? They sell sponsor spots, they're selling tickets. At the beginning, I think I realized, and it took a little bit to navigate, but I think we figured it out. By switching to the membership model, it really got us out of that sponsor-led thing where, say we go sell a sponsorship to someone and they come in for one event, do the song and dance. They could be, great folks, great partners. It's really tough to magically, snap your finger once and get a lot of business out of that or expect to be, well known, right? So I think the membership model, it exists, much more like a social club, right?
Yep.
It's long-term. We host extremely frequently across all of our cities so that, you've had many chances, people know you now in the group, they've gotten to meet you, they see us publishing things online about you, and it's the same for all of our members. It just builds to that familiarity.
So let's get into that a little bit. For those who are listening, I want them to get a real sense for what it is you do. And to me, it's multifaceted. So well, I'll let you describe it, but I mean, I see it sort of separated in your amazing events, the way you publish thought leadership things at groups like ours, right? And your unbelievable ability to make connections. I mean, and I'll say this for our listeners, the example is London. I mean, we have some connectivity, Bridgeford, just because of our work in international space. But I mean, as a member of this group, they take it very seriously to make connections, and not just networking, backslapping, meaningful connections where we can help each other. So, Matt, can you describe all of that? Because in my opinion, this is why your organization transcends just a social club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's I guess the not so secret sauce is, we're a team of 6, right? So we're all spread out. We have a couple of our team members are LA based, Texas, Baltimore. I'm in New York, and then London as well. So we're all over the place. We'll do 10, 12, 15 events a month. We really focus on spending a lot of time with each person, each company, understand their background, their interests, who they already work with, basically just try to be as close with them and kind of understanding of what they're doing as possible. And often a lot of the value too is exactly, what you're doing and what you've done too is in traveling. I think each city can be a little bit of a, it can be verge on a bubble sometimes. Folks in Miami will generally know each other over time, in Nashville and New York and whatnot. But I think as soon as you start to travel and really meet people, I think it just elevates things a lot. And again, I think advisors are hunting for those connections as well. So that's always been our focus. I think the other thing too that I picked up on just from participating in a lot of other events and organizations over the years is we've always kind of religiously stuck with the fact that we're not advisors. We don't do referral fees. We just focus on the membership. And I think in that way, we're kind of Switzerland, to some extent in the group. We're not competing. I've seen other groups where maybe they're run by, some type of advisor, which is great. And they'll kind of do it maybe on the side. I think the benefit with us that's ultimately helped us out and all of our members is that we're not, we're not offering any kind of products or anything like that, separately, right? This is our only focus.
Which adds to your credibility, in my opinion. Just a quick summary of what events are upcoming. I know there's Miami, which I'll see you there, of course, and Europe. But just for the listeners and our audience, just to get a sense for your activity. I mean, just run up what's going on next 30 days. Just ballpark.
Man,
it's a lot.
That's a real.
I should have told you to study.
I'm doing my best to keep up. Yeah, I just got back from London last week, and my head's spinning. Let's see. LA, we have a huge event tomorrow with UBS. It's our big Emmy event. So I'm headed out there bright and early tomorrow.
Great.
Let me think. We have Nashville and actually we also have New York tomorrow, Nashville, Miami. I'm going to next week. Obviously the big Swiss UK tour with you and the Bridgeford team that's coming up in the next 2 weeks. And a big event wise, what's coming up for us is, let's think, we have a Trusted Women's Forum in Los Angeles.
That's fantastic. That's a great idea.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
It's a blast. We've done it for a while. We have these Trusted Women's chapters across the board. And so it's all female speakers, but there's panels on sports and private client advisory and music and whatnot. So that's in LA. Miami Sports Summit is coming up at the end of October. That's we've hosted that now for maybe 4 years.
That's the event I was thinking. I will see you at that event. That's right. Yeah.
That's a blast. So that'll be a couple days in Miami. One that we just announced that I'm excited about. So we've started to do this. We kind of figured this out in London to some extent to encourage travel as much as possible. Instead of just doing an event for one day, we'll plan multi-day series. And it's not a multi-day summit. A lot of it is experiential. So we'll do maybe a paddle event, some sort of, activity to kick things off. Maybe we'll do a private tour, do a curated breakfast. We'll do like a half-day summit with real learning, but it's more experiential. And then there's plenty of time. So we've done that in London for a few years. We call it our World Congress. That's in June. But we're going to do it in Nashville in November. We've dubbed it our Nashville Music Week. So, we've hosted events in Nashville for quite a few years. This will be the first time that we've done something this big. But I already see that it really, by doing some bigger kind of keynote events throughout the year, it attracts a lot of attention. It helps with people that want to travel there, that are already doing business, to kind of give them a real reason to bring everyone together. We're spinning that up in November. And then we also bring the sports summit to London in November too. So I think those are the biggest events for the fall.
I love the activity, and I'm a high energy activity guy, and you make me tired, so I think, which is great. And it's really a perfect way to sort of end. I mean, I want to thank you. I mean, in addition to allowing us in, what's that Groucho Marx joke? Anybody who lets me in their club is something's wrong with the club or something. But all joking aside, you have been unbelievably gracious, you and your team, to Bridgeford. We're so aligned in the way we like to go to market anyway, but you brought a lot of visibility to Bridgeford, and we don't take that for granted. And as you know, I'm a huge promoter of what you were doing and talk about you all the time, and happy to bring credible people to the group for you guys to consider letting in. So I just want to congratulate you on what you built. I mean, as I began, it's an idea I wish I came up with. The fact that it's growing so fast is a testament to that, and probably not surprising. I mean, you seem to have a knack for finding the hole or the space that needs service, it needs attention. So we continue to be excited about a very long-term partnership with you and your group. And for our listeners, all Matt's contact information and the website will be easily and readily available. If you have an interest and if you have a particular focus, of course, in this industry, please contact Matt directly. It's everything I've impressed with you, Matt. I know when you're just one person, but I've heard stories of you meeting one-on-one with potential people who want to join all over the world. And it's amazing because that takes a lot of energy to do that too. So for our listeners, that's an indication of Matt's accessibility. And he's very accessible. He's very responsive, even at 600 members. So once again, congratulations to you and your team and what you've built. And I look forward to tremendous collaboration with you all for many years to come.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me today. This has been a lot of fun. We love working with you guys. I think exactly like you said, your personality, I think your entire company fully embodies, I think, the ethos of exactly what makes our group successful. And, the reason that people want to come out, they don't necessarily want to come out just to, see me, to see our team. I think they want to meet other reliable advisors and resources like yourself. So I think that's why it's always a match made in heaven. And, we love working with you guys. You're the real stars. I think obviously we're just focused on building the platform for folks like yourself to do what you do and, be that resource. So we're here for it, and we'll see where things take us over time. But obviously, it's going to be through strong relationships like we have with you. So, thank you very much, and we'll get you an agent soon. I think for your podcast, and you'll be up on the influencers. All the trust stuff will just be something on the side. But
I can't even influence what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, Matt. You kidding me? I don't know. We'll see.
Same, but yeah, appreciate it. It's good. Someone's got to do it. It's a lot of work.
Again, but thanks again for everything. Again, Matt Hoffman, trusted advisor. Look him up. And Matt, I will see you soon at a bunch of upcoming events.
Thank you, David.
Thanks again for listening to Bridgeford Trust Company's Delivering Direction and Control podcast series. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast to keep posted on when new episodes are added. And for more information, you can visit us online at bridgefordtrust.com.